A goal, Chris Billy, Huddersfield Town. The most famous goal of Chris Billy's life.
Is this the moment for Lee Fowler? It is. Take your place in Division 2, Huddersfield Town.
Ruby and Steve Simonson's boots now. He's missed. Steve Simonson clears the frame of the goal and collapses in a heap of tears. Huddersfield Town are promoted.
Mustafa Schindler has a chance to write his name in Huddersfield Town legend. And he takes that chance!
Hello and welcome to the Andy Takes That Chance preview show, The Drive-In. It's Matt and Killer here to steer you in the right direction for Town's home game against Wigan. How are you doing, Killer?
Yeah, I'm all right, Matt. Looking forward to, again, coming back after an FA Cup break and being able to focus on the league, just like a proper League One club does when they've failed.
Yeah, let's talk about League One clubs. What do you know about Wigan, Killer?
Well, they're about as much of a yo-yo League One club as you can get today, really. But we've got a very, very big section, haven't we, Matt, from Barry from a podcast in Wigan. And now, rather than step on his toes too much, I'll go lightly over it this time. But Wigan, over the last 24 months, have had a pretty rough time. They started last season with a points deduction in League One. They did okay and finished 12th. And had they not had those 8 points, I think they got at the beginning of the season taken off, removed, they'd have been in and around the playoffs. They were a solid side, and over the summer they've done okay. They've strengthened in the defence department through loans. The budget isn't massive. They started the season pretty rough this year, but only losing by the odd goal. And now what? We're 15, 16 games into the season, and they've conceded the fewest goals. And considering the 15th in the league, that tells you they're very, very hard to break down. But they don't score too many goals. There's a few star players that probably would stand out at any team in League One, but Barry can go into it further because he puts together an unbelievable little run here of explaining what Wigan Athletic are this season.
I'll tell you what, Killer, what I will do is I'll tell you all about Wigan's history and then Barry can tell us about the present. So let me tell you, Wigan, a bit of a town who struggled to get a foothold in the Football League in the early days with short-lived attempts from Wigan County, Wigan United and Wigan Borough. However, along came Wigan Athletic in 19... They played in the Cheshire County League for 9 seasons before joining the Lancashire Combination League in 1947. They spent 14 seasons in that league before flirting with the Cheshire County League in the 1960s, before they became a founding member of the new Northern Premier League in 1968. The club won the league twice and the FA Trophy before they were elected to the Football League in 1978, so rather late into the Football League compared to a lot of clubs. But the club in just 46 years, they have racked up a decent honours list. They've finished runners-up in the Championship in 2005, spent 8 consecutive seasons in the Premier League, played in the Europa League, won League One 4 times, won League Two once, and were promoted once via the automatic places. They won the FA Cup in 2013, were runners-up in the Community Shield that same year, and were the League Cup runners-up also in 2006. The club played at the old Springfield Park from their formation until 1999, when they moved to the then JJB Stadium, and are called the Latics. Do you know why they're called the Latics, Killer?
No, but I know it's nice when all little lads shout up the ticks. But apart from that, Matt, not a clue.
Well, it's again, it goes back to pronunciations and local dialect. So it's an athletic suffix, so letic. So it's basically the Letics. If we were in 2024, which we are, and they were formed today, they'd be called the Letics. But as it was and how they pronounced it back then, it's the Latics. But Killer, how have they fared against the Terriers? Well, we've played 34 times, which is not a lot. And Town have won 14, Wigan 12, and there have been 8 draws. The first meeting was in 1973 in the FA Cup, which Town won 2-0. The first league meeting was in 1978 at Leeds Road, which ended at 1-1. But Town's recent form has not been particularly good, only winning one of the last 6 meetings courtesy of an Elias Kachunga goal at the now Brick Community Stadium, And Town's recent home form is not good against the Latics either, having only won one game in Huddersfield since 1993, and that was a 1-0 win in 2014 thanks to an Adam Clayton strike. A quirky game for me, Killer. Town had a 10-game unbeaten run against Wigan from 1983 to 1993, and it's that game in 1993 I'm going to focus on a little bit. So this was during the Mick Buxton, Ian Ross Great Escape era. Town played Wigan away from home on the 16th of February and lost 1-0, and at that point was sunk at the bottom of the league. The next game took place on the 12th of April, so a little under 2 months later, and since the previous game, Town had won 7 games and would make Wigan the 8th with a nice little 2-1 win, and it would be the 8th in 11 games, and it saw Town rise from 23rd to 15th in that period, which was pretty impressive and led to the greatest escape at that time. And there's a nice goal in there for Gary Barnett, so shout out to an early 90s cult hero. Some players who played for both, Killer, can you remember any?
Just the fantastic loan we had with Mick Wadsworth's wonderful season where Lee Ashcroft came in later on. That's the one that really stands out for me for being probably the most underwhelming January we had since last year.
I'd rather have Richard Ashcroft, to be honest. He's probably one of Wigan's finest imports, isn't he? Great singer from The Verve. So players that have played for both: Lee Ashcroft, Alex Bruce, Romani Edmonds-Green had a spell there on loan, Michael Flynn, Joe Garner, David Graham, Geordie Hiwula, Grant Holt, Emir Hughes, Reece James, Martin Kelly, Kevin Zinedine Kilban. Lee Nichols has played for both, Anthony Pilkington, Gary Roberts, Kevin Sharp, Daniel Sinani, David Unsworth, James Vaughan, Martin Waghorn, Mark Ward, John Whitney, and Mark Wright. So I think Anthony Pilkington's probably the pick there. I think for both, did really well for both clubs. So did Gary Roberts, to be fair. Grant Holt was very good at one point, wasn't he? But I'm not sure we saw entirely the best of him at us, although he was fairly decent. I'm not sure Wigan saw the best either. Right. So, Killer, how have Wigan got on recently?
Well, the form's been pretty up and down, like I mentioned earlier on, in that they started pretty poorly, but they've with a new owner coming in the summer, the budget is admittedly pretty low for League One. I think it's around 3 to 4 million, which is less than what we are expecting ours to be. They've been through such a tough time off the field that, again, listening to Barry, he'll talk about it, that the fans are kind of just happy to be in existence and just want the club to continue to be in existence because they've been through such a rough period. They're focusing under Sean Maloney, who came in after. He obviously played for them a few years ago. He's a bit of a legend at Wigan, but his coaching experience isn't excessive. He was at Hibernian previously, only for 4 months before getting the Wigan job. But they kind of know what they are. They know what kind of football they have to play to overachieve. They've brought in young lads. They've got an academy that they try and utilise as much as possible. And because of that, Wigan like to play quite a defensive, structured football. They don't give you any opportunities to score easy goals because they can't really create too much themselves, that they're just going to make it hard for you to break them down. And so far this season, they're not very far off. Don't let the 15th in the table trick you into believing they're not very good. They're very close to being very good. They did start poorly, but they've started getting it together a little bit. They've not particularly done too well against the better teams, although I think they did they only lost to Birmingham by a goal. And then in the last 3 games, or the last 4 games, if you include the EFL Trophy where they beat Nottingham Forest under 21s on penalties, they've beaten Barnsley 1-0 away from home. They've beaten they've beaten Northampton, at home at Wigan 2-1, and then they've made it through to the 3rd round of the FA Cup, having beaten Cambridge United this weekend, just gone 2-1, without particularly playing too well. And as we'll go through the squad shortly, so I won't get too into how good certain players are, but in Sam Tickling, in Tickle in net, they've got a very, very good keeper that's keeping them in games where maybe the gifting teams just a little opportunity to score. And they're a team that can't chase games, so they've got to play like that. They have to play structurally sound. And so far this season, they're doing okay.
Right, so I tell you what, why don't we check in with Barry now? So here's Barry from the Progress with Unity podcast.
Hi, this is Barry Worthington from the Progress with Unity Latics podcast. Thank you very much for inviting me along to preview Tuesday evening's clash between the Terriers and the Latics. You sent me 5 points over to talk about. Question 1. How has the club recovered after the ownership issues that you have had a few years ago? Well, our last issue happened in June 2023. We was relegated from the Championship due to a points deduction at the end of that season, which I'm sure Terriers fans will be well aware of, as you were struggling down with us at the foot of the table that particular season. But our problems ran much deeper than relegation. We was very close to going out of business. In fact, Danson came in at the 11th hour and saved us. It's the fastest ever takeover of a club in EFL history. That's how close we were. So very, very grateful to Mike Danson, local businessman, owner of Wigan Warriors, bought a Wigan Athletic. It wasn't something he was looking to do. He was persuaded by our MP, our head of the Supporters Trust, our manager, Sean Maloney, all more or less begged him to save the club, which he did do, but on the understanding that he wouldn't be throwing vast amounts of money in, and we had to work on a sustainable model. Now, it's already cost him about 20 million quid just to pay off the debts, get the players' wages paid, get the staff wages paid, and get us through last season. So he's well out of pocket already. But Sean Maloney promised him he could run the club on a budget of between 3 and 4 million, which in League One is a lower end budget. But he said that he could run the club on that, and that's what Danson's bought into. So that's where we are. And to be honest with you, it doesn't bother me at all. Aspirations, we've all got aspirations of promotion, but please, let's do it sensible. My main concern is that we've got a club for our kids and for our grandkids, and it's that longevity that I'm more concerned with rather than any short-term success on the playing pitch. Maloney's doing a good job. We're very reliant on academy players coming through. We've had a really good crop recently, and also our loans. We've got 6 loans in. I think the oldest loan player is 21 who we've got. So again, they're all young players, and basically that's our team. And with young players, you get inconsistency, and that's where we are at the moment, quite inconsistent, both in performances and in results. But like I said, we've got a club, and that's all what matters. Number 2, what are your expectations at the start of this season, and how is it going? Well, my expectations, and I had hopes. So my hope, first of all, was that we'd build on what happened last year, which was mid-table. Without the 8 points deduction we started the season with, we would have been pushing for the playoffs. So I was hoping that perhaps we could have a little flutter with the playoffs. But my expectations weren't that, because, as I've just said, looking at the team, full of young players, inconsistency abound, and I expected us to be roughly where we are now, mid-table, with results and performances up and down, and that's where we are. But it's very enjoyable going to games and watching homegrown talent that's come through the ranks, local lads put in really good shifts on the pitch, looking like excellent players. I like seeing these young loan players we get as well, watching them develop. So there are different sides to being a fan of Wigan Athletic at the moment. You know, you want us to do as well as possible, obviously, but it's also quite nice to see and take pride in what's happening with the young lads coming through. We are where I thought we'd be. We've just got through to the 3rd round of the FA Cup as well. On Saturday, we went to Cambridge and won there for the first time in 25 years. So that was a bit of a hoodoo to shift. So that was very good. So we're in the FA Cup. So we've got a nice little run in the FA Cup going on. We're through to the knockout stages of the Virtue Trophy, and we're mid-table in League One. So you can't complain, can you? Number 3, who are your standout performers to look out for? Well, I mentioned the academy. We're going to come through the academy. He's played against Huddersfield before. He seems to have been around for ages. He's pushing on, going up towards probably 170 games now for the Latics. Tello Asgard. He's still only 22. It feels like he's been around forever. He's our top scorer this season. He's coming into his own now. He plays in the number 10 role. Absolutely sensational player. He scored in the last 3 games on the bounce. He's in a really good vein of form, and definitely look out for him. I mentioned players coming in on loan. Unfortunately, we've lost Luke Chambers, who is, without any shadow of a doubt, the best left-sided defender in League One. We had him on loan from Liverpool last season. Very surprised that they let him. He came back to us again. We all thought he was going to the Championship, but no, came back to Latics. He's ended up having a serious back injury, so we don't know if he's going to be playing again this season. Fingers crossed that he gets back with us. A fabulous player, and he's only 19. Oh, what a player he is. Dale Taylor up front, we got him on loan from Nottingham Forest. Took him a little bit of time to settle into the team, but over the past 4 or 5 games, he's been sensational. He's not scored, but his link-up play with Tello Asgard are forging a brilliant partnership together. To describe how he plays, if you think back to when Sean Maloney was a player, very, very similar in stature and very similar in style as well. Really good player. He's got 2 goals for us. If he can add more goals to his performances, then he's going to be absolute standout this season. Sam Tickle in goal, recently voted the North West League One player of the season. Brilliant last season, his first full season for the Latics, 22 years of age, England under-21 international, and he'll take your breath away with some of the saves that he does. Won us loads of points this season, just an absolute sensational goalkeeper. There's been interest in him from Arsenal, Manchester United, Everton, Premier League clubs. I'll be surprised if he's with us come the start of next season. Really surprised. I hope he is, and I know he's, having spoken with him, he says, all I want to do is play games. I mean, he's a lovely lad, as well as a fabulous football player. Our 2 centre-backs are our most experienced players, Jason Kerr and Will Aimson. Aimson was signed from Exeter City in the summer. He came in to replace Charlie Hughes, who was a graduate from our academy. He'd been with us since he was 12 years of age, and we sold him off to the Championship. He'll play for England one day, and we was all quite down about the fact that we'd lost Charlie. But Will Aimson's come in, and one thing you get with Aimson is a defender. And I mean a real defender. Body on the line, absolute superb. Him and Kurt, they look like they've been playing together all the careers. And, to think they've only been together for about 3 months is astonishing, really. Got the second best defensive record in the division. And it's no coincidence that it's down to the 3 players I've just mentioned, Sam Tickle in goal, and then Will Aimson and Jason Kerr. Absolutely sensational. So those. We've got a young lad in midfield as well. You're probably not aware of it. He weren't with us when we was in the Championship. I'm not going to mention too much about him, but you're gonna enjoy his performance. Number 4. How are you likely to line up, and what style are you now playing? Well, we play 4-2-3-1. We have fast wingers with overlapping fullbacks. Now, our right-footed winger plays on the left and our left-footed winger plays on the right, and they both cut inside, and the fullbacks go beyond them. It's really effective, but having said that, we're the second lowest goal scorers in the division as well, so maybe it's not that effective. But having looking at our stats, we're each week we're gaining more and more attempts at goal. We hit the target quite regularly. So I'm not into this XG stuff. I don't understand any of that. But all I know is we're creating chances a lot more now than what we was earlier on in the season. And I expect that goal ratio to start climbing. And I think we're on about 60% conversion rate as well. So expect us to create chances and hit the target is what I'll say. Number 5. How do I see the game going and give you a score prediction? Well, you know what? I'm tempted to go for the draw because I've noticed you don't draw many games, and I don't think you've drawn at all this season. And we went on a run where we drew 6 on the bounce, so we know how to scrape a draw out of a game. But we've had a great recent record at your place over the past 8 visits with just the 1 defeat. And in that was our 5th round tie en route to winning the FA Cup in 2013 when we beat you 4-1. I love getting that in at every opportunity. We did win the FA Cup in 2013. And we did beat you at your place 4-1. But I don't think it'll be 4-1 on Tuesday. I think it'll be a very, very tight game. I know you've got a couple of decent players in your squad, and I do like your manager. And I did pick you to win the league at the start of the season. but I think this is one game where you might come a little bit unstuck, and I'm going for a scoreline of Huddersfield Town 0, Wigan Athletic 1. Thank you very much for having me on the show. Best of luck for the rest of the season, but I hope you have an absolute nightmare on Tuesday. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Okay, big thanks to Barry for chipping in with that. So a nice 10 minutes and a nice thorough going over there from Barry, wasn't the killer? So, lots for us to think about there, buddy. And I think we know what's coming next, don't we, mate? Right, Killer, back on the tactics board. So it's the section that me and you like in particular, because it means we can get our dirty paws into the grubby stuff, the tactics, the movements, the little patterns of play, and we'll have a good look. So we've got in front of us at the minute, we've got Huddersfield Town. If you're watching on YouTube, Huddersfield Town on the left in the blue, Wigan on the right in the black, and how we think we're going to line up. If you're listening online, we will do our very, very best to guide you through this audibly. So we think Town will line up in the usual 3-5-2. There's possibly one or two arguments to maybe tinker that slightly with the forward line, with so many sort of strikers misfiring at the minute, but I'm not entirely convinced that Michael Duff will change that system just yet. In goal, Jacob Chapman will continue, we presume, with Lee Nichols not yet ready to step back in. Defence, we've had some great news on Matty Pearson, who's back in training, and we've heard that he will be back quite soon, but unfortunately not soon enough for tomorrow night, which probably means that Tom Lees will start, we would think, on the right-hand side, where he did okay against Leyton Orient in last midweek game. He seemed a little bit happier there in terms of that. Mikael Helik, who was back amongst the goals against Orient as well, probably in the centre. And then Nigel Lonvik, as usual, on the left at left centre-back. I think that potentially picks itself. The only wild card there will be whether you would pick Brodie Spencer maybe as a right centre-back, if possible. But I think he will potentially line up on the right-hand side instead of Ollie Turton at right wing-back. Ollie Turton has a shout there. I think he started off quite well against Leyton Orient, and then sort of with that ball into the box, which Bojan and Karoma kind of should have both done a little bit better with, and then didn't really get into it as much. And Brodie's got that pace, hasn't he, on this right-hand side? So I think they'll go with Brodie. Herbie Kane and David Kasumu picks itself as the pivot in midfield. We've had some really bad news on the left-hand side, with Mikael Miller set to miss the next 3 to 4 months. In the very unlikely event that Mikael Miller listens to this podcast, I'm sure everyone and every Huddersfield Town fan will wish him the very best of luck in his recovery, and he will be missed over the next couple of months. Ben Wiles will play as the more advanced, we hope, if Ben Wiles is fully fit. And then the issues are up front. Who is that front two killer? And this is where it gets a little bit tricky, because there's probably 3 strikers, I would imagine, who will be shouting for a start. Freddie Ladapo didn't really cover himself in glory when he came on against Leyton Orient. Danny Ward doesn't seem to be in much favour at the minute. Although I think it was mentioned there was a potential illness on radio leads. So that leaves 2 of Bojan Radulovic, Josh Karoma and Callum Marshall. And none of them are in particularly amazing form at the minute. There's an argument to pick Josh Karoma on the left of the front 2 to let him play himself back into form after a little spell out with injury. Last week he had flown around the world several times over, hasn't he, with what it's like with connecting flights in Africa. So there is an argument that maybe he was a little bit run down, but he's had a full week on the training field, so maybe he'll be a little bit sharper. So maybe Karoma, and then it's between Marshall and Radulovic, and I think a lot of people would argue for Marshall after he scored against Orient through sheer tenacity, if anything. But I've just got this slight inkling that he might go with Bojan up top. I'm not sure what's leading me that way. But I think Karoma's the one that'll pick, and now I've said that, it'll probably be Bojan and Marshall. Who knows? But it's a tricky one, isn't it? There's an argument for changing the shape up front, isn't the killer? Because no one's particularly playing great in that role at the minute. The midfielder in, but who would you squeeze in? Because there's so many injuries that a Hodge or an Evans at the minute, because they're both struggling with injuries. Jonathan Hogg would only add to the defensive structure. So, you could move Kane up with Ben Wiles behind a striker, but again, is that just changing it for the sake of it because we're on a decent run? So I imagine it'll be 3-5-2. It's just everything, I think, pretty much picks itself apart from the two strikers as usual.
Yeah, I just can't face Bojan Radulovic again. You've really put me on a downer now. We've won 6 in a row. Like we're flying. We're absolutely flying, and now we're having to consider who can play up front again. I still think Danny Ward, if he's fit, is something, gives us something extra. And for me personally, I'd have him up there in a second, but Duff don't like him or doesn't seem to want to play him or whatever's happening behind the scenes in regards to him not being available to be selected. But then he's missed out on squads before when he has been fit. But I think he gives us a little bit of a different impetus. Marshall has to start though, doesn't he? I'm a big believer that no matter how you score, if you score, you've kind of earned the right to start the week after, especially if you're a striker. Him and Koroma for me will probably get the start, and it's probably the right way to go. But it's just the biggest decision for me, Matt's the Turton Spencer thing. I think Turton's been good. I think he should stick on the right, and I'd chuck Spencer on that left hand side as a wing back. I don't know if that's something that'll be considered, but we're getting quite thin throughout that middle 11, aren't we? Middle 10. Obviously, Chapman's going to be there as the number 1, and that's a bona fide pick. But there's just holes appearing through areas, and we're going into December, which is the busiest month of the year when it comes to fixtures. And before we've even started, we look thin in certain places. So,
despite having a bulk squad, it's funny, isn't it?
It's really quite strange for us to have a squad where I don't think we've got any standout players, but the quality overall, the average is much better than most teams in this division. So that gives you that depth that when you get to December, January, February, you have the players to rotate in and out when you're playing Saturdays, Tuesdays, Saturday, like we are for the foreseeable future. Yeah, we don't have that many players. There's not that many options. It's quite a strange situation to go at. But I think it's who plays that other side on the wing back. And who
I forgot to mention that, didn't I? I was too busy getting caught up in Mikael Miller's injury. There's a couple of options. There's Josh Ruffles. I think the problem is if you pick Josh Ruffles, it probably ends up being a left back rather than a wing back. And it's the same for me. If you pick Ollie Turton, it ends up being more of a back than a wing. So if you pick those two, you've got a back 5. There's an argument to pick Brodie on the left because that's where he plays for Northern Ireland, and he does pretty well by all accounts, doesn't he? Because he cuts in and
he scored, didn't he? He did score. Did he score and create from that left hand side? So he's worth a shout, I think, for me.
Yeah, I would potentially go Brodie over Ruffles, and then when Sorensen's fit, he would come in for Turton for me on the right. But I'm just wondering which way he's going to go with that. On to Wigan. So how can Wigan hurt us? What do Wigan do well, Killer? They kind of play this back 4. They've got an excellent goalkeeper we've mentioned before, haven't they? Sam Tickle, 22 years of age, come through the academy at Wigan. He's kept 8 clean sheets this season, only conceded 13 in 16 matches. There's not a lot getting past him at the minute in terms of goals. He's a genuinely outstanding young goalkeeper who's got a lot of people looking up at him. He's just his claim, the amount of the percentages of the high balls that he claims and his save percentages are both really good and some of the best in the league. So that's a real plus point for Wigan. At the back, right back, they've got Toby Sibic, who is a player I don't know an awful lot about. I know he can play centre back and right back in one, so I would imagine he adds that sort of layer of protective cover on the inside. And then the left, they've been going with Ryan Sessignon's, I don't know if he's older brother, isn't he? Stephen Sessignon. Or maybe younger brother. I can't remember how old Ryan Sessignon is now. Anyway, stop waffling. And they've got Stephen Sessignon at left back. I've seen him play right back before, so I don't know if he's used to that role. He used to be doing relatively well as well for them. And the 2 centre backs, Williamson and I think it's Jason Kerr, is it? Who plays? Yeah, Jason Kerr. Will Ameson's played against us before, Killer. His grandfather is Paul Ameson, who played for Huddersfield Town in the 1960s. And I was led to believe that Will Ameson is, in fact, a Huddersfield Town fan. So there we go. So maybe that'll add a little bit of extra impetus to him. got this slightly the wrong way around, I think, in terms of on the board, but I think they go with a sort of a DM, sort of 4-1-4-1 kind of system rather than 4-2-3-1. The DM is Matthew Smith when he's fit and who plays in that sort of defensive midfield role. And then they've got David Weir's son, Jensen Weir, in midfield. He's an interesting player. And then on the other side is the goal threat, isn't it? It's Taylor Asgard, who's been at Wigan quite a while, come through the academy as well. Very interesting player. Obviously, Asgard's where Thor lives, as everybody knows. He's someone who's always threatened to really kick on and look to be a player that could go higher, if you like, higher than League One. But he's never quite set fire. But he's on quite a good little recent run at the moment. So he's scored 3 at the start of the season, but he's on a good run of form. I'm led to believe at the minute, with a couple of decent games and a good one last time out against Peterborough. The wingers are interesting. They've got Johnny Smith on the right. He's 27. He's signed from Burton Albion last summer, not the summer gone, but summer 2023. So he's coming up to 50 appearances for Wigan. And then on the other side, they've got someone called Silko Thomas, who's again not someone I've heard a lot about, but he's on loan from Leicester City. So as Barry mentioned, they do make as much of their loans as possible with some of these young players. And then up front is a young player called Dale Taylor. Dale Taylor, he seems to be more of a facilitator than a goal scorer. So he's got 4 assists rather than he's got more assists than goals. So he's got 4 assists and 2 goals. So he's like Barry mentioned previously, he's a hard-working runner who facilitates for the others. So what we get with Wigan is they're a compact unit. They don't concede a lot of goals. Up until recently, hadn't scored a lot of goals either, but they've just started to score a couple more. So last time out against Cambridge, they won 2-1. Time before against Northampton as well, they won 2-1 as well. So they're starting to turn a bit more around. Last time they visited Yorkshire, like you mentioned, they went to Barnsley and won 1-0, and that was Barnsley were in reasonable form as well in the top 6. So I think Wigan will be hoping that lightning strikes twice there. So Huddersfield got to be on their mettle, mate, a little bit. So it's going to be a really interesting game. You must have a prediction for this game, old boy.
Yeah, oh boy, careful, Matt. We're youngest 2 on this podcast usually. Come on. It's going to be a slog, like you said. They defend compact, very compact. Their back 4 is always within the half spaces, which means, for people who don't understand that, is just between the edges of the box. Like, they're very, very narrow, and they don't ever go out and really engage out wide. It's normally where your wing backs come in and really kind of beat that system. But our problem is, as we know, we don't have Miller, we don't have Sorensen, we don't really have wing backs that can kind of unlock that defence. I think, Matt, going through the last few games against Wigan, even for the last 10 or 11 years, we've played him so many times, but most games are either 1 goal or a very maximum a couple of goals. It's 1992, the last time in the league where either team have put 3 past each other. So it's not going to be an exciting one. I see a tight 1-0 victory for Town, but I think it's going to be quite a frustrating watch. Wigan don't have the money, but where they have invested is in the defence. It's expensive to bring strikers in, as we found out. And Birmingham have gone out and spent the mega money, and it's still not particularly working for them. They've also got Luke Chambers, that we haven't mentioned, who came in on loan from Liverpool under-21s, but he's out at the moment with a back injury, and he's really well regarded, but he's not playing for them at the moment, but may make appearance Tuesday night. I think 1-0, Matt. I think 1-0, and I think Ben Wiles again. Just like Thelo Asgard for Wigan, in the way they play is they build pressure. They don't really create great chances. They build pressure. It drops to the edge of the box, and then someone normally scores. That's why Asgard's their top goal scorer, and Ben Wiles is it for us. I think Wiles is the answer tomorrow, and then we'll get us another goal from the edge in a 1-0 win.
Yeah, I've not gone for a big score. I think it's got a 1-goal game written all over it. 1-0, 2-1. I think if Wigan score first, it's going to be very difficult to sort of pen them back, because they'll defend, they'll spoil, they'll make it difficult. If we score first, then it'll still be. I think Wigan will still sit in until sort of the end, and then hopefully hope to make us panic sort of last 15-20 minutes by throwing the cat amongst the pigeons maybe a little bit. So I think it's going to be an ugly game. It's not going to be great. We thought it'd be an ugly game against Charlton as well, didn't we? And it turned out sort of that way. I think it might be a similar sort of game, and Wigan are on decent form as well. So I wanted to go 1-0 as well. But because you've said it, I might say 2-1 instead. But I'm not sure how Town are going to get the goals here. Maybe again set piece. It might have to be set piece again with Helic potentially, although they're quite well.
That's it, Matt. I think, sorry to jump in, Matt, but if you've conceded only 13 goals all season, you are pretty good at defensively at set pieces at League One, because if you're not, you concede. Wigan don't, because they aren't bad with the aerial battles when it comes to set pieces. And that's what we normally win games with, and it's why I have it down as tighter than I think a lot of people would have.
Yeah, I look at their midfield, though, as well, and I look at Kasumu can make a difference. His energy is going to be difficult to track for Asgard and Weir. Ben Wiles is going to have his hands full because they sit with a number 6, don't they? So that sort of ties him up a little bit. I mean, our quality is not going to be great from wide. So, with Turton, Brody or Ruffles, so we're not going to have that quality. So it could be something like a Josh Karoma snapshot from the edge of the box. That's something like that to break it. Maybe Ben Wiles, if he gets free, like you mentioned, it's going to take something like that. So I don't really see anything from the other forwards, if I'm honest, because Bojan's not going to get the support, the ball from wide where he wants it. Marshall is going to struggle to get round the back because they're going to sit a bit deeper. So it's going to be an interesting game, but a frustrating one, I think. But I think a 1-goal win. Barry's gone for a goal win, hasn't he, for Wigan? So we all fancy just that 1-goal advantage. So I think that's it for this week, buddy. We've got we can go a little bit around the grounds, can't we? If we want to do. There's a couple of other fixtures. There's 1 or 2 other fixtures this weekend as well. This Tuesday night as well. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm getting onto the Mansfield one already. It's interesting because obviously the FA Cup has come in at the weekend, and it's interfered. It's given us a nice couple of days off, obviously, but it's given a couple of other teams a couple of games. But yeah, if we look at the full program, Town, remember, kick off at 8:00. Bolton have got Mansfield at home, and Bolton probably need a win. There's been a lot of noise again around Ian Evatt again from Bolton fans who've been very noisy with him all season about wanting him in and out and whatnot. Charlton have got Crawley at home. I think that's a good opportunity for Charlton to get back on the horse. Exeter versus Wickham. Do you know what? Wickham are just absolutely on fire out there, and Exeter have dropped off a little bit. I think Wickham probably take that and really frustrate the likes of us and Birmingham at the top end of the league a little bit longer. Orient versus Bristol Rovers. That's a pick 'em, isn't it? It could go either way. Rotherham versus Lincoln. Steve Evans is under fire, isn't he? He needs a win. The big man needs a win. Otherwise, he's going to be crying into his sombrero. I'm not sure. Is he going to get that, do you think?
I'm just waiting. He's on borrowed time already. He's on borrowed time, Steve Evans. Come on, we've seen the Rotherham owner kicking off with his own team in the stands recently. Once that happens, it never goes well. It's just a matter of time for Steve Evans before he's on his way. And I'll tell you what, Matt, I think a few of us we'll quite enjoy that moment, won't we?
Yeah. Stevenage versus Northampton, that's local-ish, isn't it, down there in that sort of neck of the woods? Should be an interesting game. Wrexham versus Barnsley, I think, is probably the standout for me of the lot of them on Tuesday. That's interesting because Barnsley are kind of playoff pretenders a little bit, aren't they? They kind of flirt with it and then drop out, flirt, get in, drop out. Whereas Wrexham have been there a while. But I think a lot of people look at Wrexham's team, us included, and just kind of go, it's not amazing. It just takes one stone, doesn't it, for an Avalanche to sort of go. And I think that might be a draw, that one. I think that'd be an interesting one, maybe a draw. Town, Wigan, obviously, and Reading, Cambridge. And Reading, I think that's a very winnable game again for Reading, who have got some of the best. I think they've got the best home form in the EFL, or did a couple of weeks ago, haven't they? So Reading could push themselves towards the top 6 before Wednesday night when Birmingham meets Stockport, which is a good fixture at the top. So that'll be an interesting one. And there's rumours Louis Barry might be leaving Stockport in January to go to Middlesbrough. That would absolutely ruin Stockport County and my prediction of them finishing in the top 6 this season. Peterborough versus Burton. Peterborough need that win because every time Peterborough seem to get on a roll, they seem to throw in a bit of a stinker, don't they? So they need a bit of a response. And the last one is Shrewsbury versus Blackpool. Gareth Ainsworth doing things. It just seems quite a good fit for Gareth Ainsworth, does that, doesn't it? Shrewsbury. I know Shrewsbury, they're kind of similar to Wickham in a lot of ways in terms of club size and sort of nice little green backdrop for the stadium, etc. And maybe that's just Gareth Ainsworth's niche. Give him some time there, and maybe he'll do some good things. I think they'll get a result there, whether it's a win or a draw. I'm not sure, but it's an interesting layout, mate. This coming week.
It looks a cracker, doesn't it? I'm really looking forward to the Wigan. I like Wickham. I like the way they play football. I like the way they attack, but I still have that feeling a bit like you have with Wrexham there, Matt, where you look at the squad and you think, yeah, but he's gonna have to burst sometimes, isn't it? This bubble, he can't continue. But Wickham just keep going and going and going and going. And Birmingham Stockport's a tricky one for Birmingham. I just thought Stockport don't go, but with Barry, they will have a go. I still can't get past 2 things this season. Tommy Tonks' long throw doing us at Tamworth, although I'm looking forward to the FA Cup draw that's been made tonight.
I can't wait to see him do it to Spurs.
That's best news all week. Spurs, Tamworth with Tommy Tonks slinging it long to, is it Dan Creaney? Is that where it was up top?
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. I cannot wait to watch that. But it's just looking at Peterborough, Matt, like you mentioned, they're a bit like the Spurs of our division, aren't they? They turn it on, and when they turn it on, they're good. But then they play against somebody a bit of dross, and they struggle quite a lot because it just doesn't go their way. And as soon as something's not going their way, it don't really go too well. But there's some cracking fixtures. If you press them,
they go to shit, don't they?
That's it, and it'll be really, really nice to see how Tottenham. I know it's not a League One game, but I feel like we've got some, I don't know, affiliation with Tamworth, having been absolutely smashed by them, figuratively speaking. And then, although another League One team did in Burton, so it's not just us anymore, is it? It's a joint effort. But no, there's some cracking fixtures this week. But Matt, it's like that every week, isn't it, in League One? It's really quite even. There's not really anybody cast adrift at the bottom too much just yet. Everyone, like I say, Shrewsbury have brought in Ainsworth, and I have absolutely no way they've got a song out of them. And Cambridge, they should have beaten Wigan this weekend. And if Sam Tickle's not in goal, they're probably doing the FA Cup. There's quite a spread of quality. It might not be the best quality, Matt, but there's not much of a drop off between a lot of these teams. And I'm just waiting for it to happen. The gap's not happening in the league. Normally somebody drops off and somebody takes off at the top, but at the moment it seems very competitive week in and week out, and you never know which way it's going to go. Apart from us, who've obviously got the last 2 town games spot on between us, so we're on for 3-3 as well.
Yeah, do you know what? I'm not as confident in this Wigan prediction as what I was in some of the others, but we'll see how it goes, mate. And me and you'll be sat there, won't we, on Tuesday night watching on. So if you listen to us before the game, thank you very much for your support, and make sure if you see it on social media, just to give it a nudge along its way so other people can see the wonders of what we do. That's it for us this week. Thank you, and we'll be back later on.
There's a team that is dear to its followers. The colours are bright blue and white. They're a team of renown, they're the pride of the town, and the game of football is their delight. And all the while upon the field of play, thousands loudly cheer them on the way. Often you can hear them say, who can beat the town today? And then the bells will ring so merrily, and every goal shall be a memory. So town, play up and bring that cup back to Huddersfield. So town, play up and bring the cup back to Huddersfield.